everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every week, photographers meet here to connect, inspire, and create. And if you'd like to join us live, you'll find the schedule for upcoming sessions on my website at lindanickell.com. Every week, a guest shares their photography tips and insight into their creative journeys, and they inspire us to look at a subject just a little differently. Tonight's guest is Robert Caldwell. Robert is a wildlife artist who uses his photography skills to document his subjects and their habitats. He then uses those photographs as a reference for his paintings and drawings. Robert's art has been exhibited in numerous national exhibitions. His work is exhibited by the Levitz Gallery in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Horton Fine Art in Beaver Creek, Colorado. In tonight's presentation, Photography from a Painter's Perspective, Robert will share his approach to wildlife photography and how he uses these images to create visually stunning narratives in his paintings. And he'll talk about a composite technique that he employs that guides the viewer's eyes through his compositions. If you'd like to see more of his work, you can connect with him through his website, rlcaldwell.com. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Robert.
Right. I'm going to start off with a presentation first, pretty much outlining my whole entire process, my thought process for taking pictures. And there should be enough time at the end because I've already gone through this a couple times. It's a little shorter than I thought, but I have a couple files up in Photoshop that after I'm done with the presentation, I can come back to, and we can actually visit the program with the files up, and I can click the layers on and off so you can see how all the adjustments that I've done are shown in real time. So that being said, I guess I will share the screen. All right, it's already been said, but my name is Robert Caldwell, and I am a wildlife artist. I work in oil and graphite pencil. I use the images that I take to create compelling compositions with a focused visual narrative. I use multiple images and composite them in Photoshop before moving on to my paintings and drawings. My idea needs to work in the composite stage, and all of the compositional issues need to be worked out before starting. This brings me to my thought process on how I approach photography. While I'm out in the field, I am either shooting for subject matter or habitat. I am not trying to get the perfect image of a subject in the perfect habitat setting. When I return to my studio, I will separate the subject from the background and insert it into a new background. This is a rough composite for a painting that I did a while back. The roosters are from one location and the truck is from another location. In most cases, I will even separate the habitat into pieces to adjust the value and saturation of individual elements, or even to blur the unimportant parts. This is a composite of a painting that I did a while back. The old water pump was from a collector's house. The building is a dilapidated old church just a little west of where I live. The grass is also from the churchyard. The idea was to create a layered look of overgrown grasses and that the water pump was located on an abandoned property. When I photograph a subject like impala or even elephants or anything else, I will photograph them individually and then in larger group shots. I will continue to photograph them as they move around, giving me many options to work with when I'm back in the studio. After I get a large sampling of images, I will start to look around at the impala's current habitat and ask myself if there's any part of it that I find interesting and that I may want to use in the future painting with these impala, or even to use with other subject matter. I am constantly looking for interesting scenery, especially scenery that offers different textures and value schemes. These are all possible images to place my impalas in for a future painting. This past October, I led a group of artists, students, and a collector on a safari in Kenya. We were in Amboseli National Park, and we had the privilege of seeing a herd of elephants come out of the brush walk towards us in the morning light with Mount Kilimanjaro in the background. And to top it off, there were no clouds obscuring the top of the mountain. That doesn't happen often. Experiencing this, I knew right away that this would be something I would paint. I photographed the herd of elephants, switching back and forth from individual to group shots for about 30 minutes. When I go to composite and compose my painting, after selecting the images I want to use, I will clean up my chosen images in the develop module in Lightroom before exporting them, just to make them look better than I can shoot. At one point, we had moved the Land Cruiser, and there was a break in the vegetation with a clear view of Mount Kilimanjaro. This is the point at which I moved from photographing a subject to photographing habitat that interested me. This image will be the main background and will set the foundation for all the additional elements that I plan to add to this. I pulled these two images for the different trees in the background. I will cut those out of their original photo so I can place them into the base photo and have the ability to move those elements around within the picture plane. And just for fun, I pulled this image of the hyena to see if there would be a possibility to add these to the composition. Who knows? We'll see if it works, if it fits in. If it doesn't, I tried it out. Not a big deal. When I am back in my studio and have uploaded my images onto my hard drive, I will use Adobe Lightroom Classic to organize them. The file structure, of course, is based on the files that I create on my hard drive. I will have a parent folder for the reference trip and subfolders for each card I use. I add the location to the file name of those files so I can navigate through the images a lot easier down the road. One of the main reasons I love Lightroom is because I can tag my images. With that, tag them, making them easier to search and filter and move through them faster later on. Am I done tagging all the images? Absolutely not. With 167,000 photos so far, just I'll never get it completely done, but I'm making the effort. When I am starting out with a possible composition, I will start in Lightroom. I may or may not have an idea for a subject when I start, but I will surely get inspired after revisiting my reference library. As I find possible images I may use, I will create a folder in my collections, give it a working title, and start adding the images. Once I have enough images to get started, I export them and then bring them into Photoshop. A composition's inspiration will come from a subject or an interesting habitat. If I love an image of a particular subject, I will look for a habitat in which to place it. In this example, my subject inspiration came from these two bluebirds. The habitat I chose to insert them into was on the limb of a dogwood tree. And this is the finished composite photo that I used to create my painting titled Hope. In this composite, each dogwood limb and bird is a separate element placed on a layer in Photoshop so I can move them around and manipulate them to create a balanced, harmonious composition. And this is the finished painting. The focus of the painting is the female bluebird. The male bluebird only plays a supporting role. Hope was commissioned by my friends, a married couple. She had a battle with breast cancer. She won. As she went through her treatments, she would watch bluebirds out her treatment room window. And her husband, the entire time, stood beside her and helped her through a difficult time in their lives. And that's why the male bluebird is behind female bluebird. She was the strong one. He was there to support her. So there's a lot of meaning to that. Sometimes an image of a habitat really gets my creative juices going, and then I look for a subject to insert into that habitat. In this example, I was out wandering the countryside with a friend west of Tulsa, Oklahoma, when we stumbled upon a construction yard that had parts and pieces of pump jacks. I saw this and immediately began taking pictures of it and knew that this would become a painting. As with most of my architectural paintings, I usually choose a bird as the subject for this one, and mourning dove seemed appropriate for this one. You can pretty much perch a bird anywhere, so that's the easiest subject to use. This is the finished composite that I used to create my painting titled American. This is the finished painting. I wish there was another cool story behind this one, but no, I am simply an artist who really likes to paint dilapidated structures. I mean, who doesn't want to paint rust and peeling faded paint? It's awesome. All right, working in Photoshop. I will start with the initial image or images that caught my interest, which will depend on whether they are subject or habitat-based images. The inspiration is subject-based in this example. Three young mountain goats from Mount Evans in Colorado. Since this is subject-based, I will roughly remove the background and then layer it over the possible habitat I picked. The habitat for this is a no-brainer, a cliffside off of Mount Evans, just natural habitat. At this point, I start to play with the different subject positionings within the habitat. I see what works and what doesn't work. Option one, this could work, but the more I look at it, the less I like the top left goat looking out of the picture plane, especially in that corner. Option two, I tried moving the top goat over to the right to get it out of the corner, but now I have the bottom goat directly looking out of the bottom right corner. This one is a major no. Option three, this is the position that I ended up using. I feel like it has some good eye movement throughout the piece, which is great because I haven't started tweaking the values and saturation to direct the eye throughout the picture plane. Once I find what works, I may start pulling in other elements from additional images or even breaking up the main habitat image into different parts to move elements around the habitat. First, I have 4 parts that make up the background. I will place them in the layers so I can move each around within the picture plane. You already know that I have chosen the 3 young goats as my subject for this painting. To start off with, I will use the image with the rock spiking up out of the upper right-hand corner. That's this one over here. I love the shape of that, and the directional lines move in a different direction than the rest of all the directional lines in the rocks. The second image added is a copy of the upper left-hand corner, which I distorted a bit so I could get the diagonal line of the top ridge of the rocks to not point so close to the upper left-hand corner. Now it leaves the picture plane a few inches away from the corner and from the top of the picture plane. And I'll go back one slide. If you look at the upper left-hand corner of this reference, you'll see it's going out towards the corner. Go back, go forward one. Now you see it's coming out of the top. So it's not creating an arrow outside the composition. That was a simple fix. It was just a simple distortion with the image. I then added the large foreground rocks, not only to provide a ledge on which to place the young goats, but also to create some variation in size and shape of the rocks. To finish off the habitat setting, I added the last rock to the lower left of the corner to break up the large, lighter shape of the foreground rock with a darker rock. This also helps to keep the viewer's eye in the picture plane. I should make note at this time about the weird gray rectangle at the bottom. I originally composed this piece. The rectangle of the picture plane was longer, and I decided to crop a bit of it before finalizing the composition. So just ignore that little gray area down there. Now to add the subjects of the painting, the 3 young goats. From the previous slide, you already know where I'm going to place them because I worked that out before diving into the nitty-gritty stuff. Goat 1 is in the upper right-hand corner looking into the picture plane. Goat number 2 gets placed towards the top with its eye about 1/3 away from the right edge of the picture plane. Goat 3 is placed on the top of that large foreground rock, and I love how the diagonal line of its back is repeated in the rock's edge behind and the diagonal of the rock edge that I placed in the lower left-hand corner. I love repeating lines. There you go. I now have a composited image, but I'm not done yet. Every element in this image now has the same value and saturation contrast. There currently is no selective focus giving me a main subject to focus in on. Now onto the nitty-gritty stuff, adjusting the value and saturation contrasts of the different elements in the picture plane. I have chosen the goat towards the top with its eye 1/3 of the way from the right edge of the picture to be my main focus of the painting. That goat is my dominant element. The other two goats will become my subdominant elements, and the rest of the elements are subordinate. To start to create my level of hierarchy, I will focus on what I can adjust in the background first so that all three goats stand out more than the background. The first step is to have those background rocks lower in value. The background rocks are the ones up here in the right-hand corner. And as I click here, you'll see them go a little bit darker. Go back one, go forward again. You can see they're already starting to get pushed back. They're already starting to help the goats come forward. Next, I need to adjust the foreground rocks, making them darker. But I also want to bring out the different planes of the middle rock. That way you can see the top plane of the rock better. I do this by creating a layer mask and then using Photoshop's dodging and burning tool. So this is before the adjustment. Go forward. You can see how the bottom plane here has gotten a little bit darker, and you can definitely see how the side plane of that top rock that I've gone in there and made that darker. Go back one. That's how it was before, and this is my adjustment. Again, with moving forward in the slide, you can see the goats, they're starting to stand out from that background, and that's what we want. To finish off adjusting the background to make it subordinate to everything else, I need to adjust the value on the rock that I inserted in the lower left-hand corner. One of the purposes I put it there was for its darker value, and now it's the same value as the lower large rock in the foreground rocks since I lowered that value. So you can see this little triangle right here. It's about to go darker. Now it's back to where it was when I first started, and that will help to prevent your eye from going off the picture plane. The background is finished, being adjusted. The three young goats are popping away from it, and now to create the hierarchy of the three goats. The first goat to be adjusted is the top left goat. I will reduce its value, ensuring there is no white values in the fur. By doing this, I also lose a bit of detail, which is good since it's not the main focus of the composition. So the goat I'm talking about is this one up here on the left. I'm getting ready to go forward on the slide. You'll see it go just a little bit darker. I'll go back and go forward again. Just a minor little adjustment, but you can start to see that goat gets pushed back as this guy comes forward. I will adjust the values of the lower goat in the same manner that I did with the upper goat, again ensuring that there are no white values in the fur and also losing a bit of detail. This is the lower goat. Go forward. You see it goes down in value just ever so slightly. Go back and forward again. The last thing to adjust is the middle goat, the star of the show. This time I'm going to adjust the value contrast by raising the whites in value and increasing the intensity of the darks. This is the last guy to be fixed right here in the middle. So it's just a minor adjustment. You can barely see the whites just get a little bit lighter. I'll go back, go forward again. And that's what I want. This guy now is creating the most attention. I do all this to create a well-balanced composition, identifying what elements need to be de-emphasized to help me focus selectively on my main subject. This composite image is now ready to be used to create my painting. As I said, this composite image is ready to be used to create my painting. If what I envision works in my finished composite, I believe it will work in my painting. Here's the finished painting. I'm extremely happy with how it came out, and I love how my eye continually returns back to that middle goat. That's what I want my viewer to do. I want their eye to go back to that middle goat every time. I love what I do, and I thoroughly love to paint. but I believe the real fun and creativity is in the composition stage. You give yourself a rectangle to work in, and then you add a bunch of elements into that rectangle. You then have to organize those elements to create a balanced and harmonious composition while creating a hierarchy of those elements. It's the most important part of being an artist. My mentor has a saying, and I believe it is still tacked up on his drawing table. It only has two words, and it reads, composition, stupid. I love it. Before I go, if you're interested in learning more about compositing and working through several projects with me, I do have a course titled Compositing, Composing in Photoshop on my drawing and oil painting instructional website at learn.rlcaldwell.com. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me tonight. I hope you find this helpful. If you are interested in seeing more of my art, please visit my website at rlcaldwell.com. I am also on Instagram and Facebook where I share updates about my work, travel, and art instruction. My wife and I bought a house that was built in 1866, so you may or may not find posts about our ongoing projects to restore the old house. Thank you again.
Okay, Robert, I have questions. Um, one mostly because I wish I had the ability to draw or paint or just that. I mean, I'm not, I had my brother was really good. He would just sit and doodle, and his doodles were really cool. Okay, so how long does it take for you to tear these different pieces apart to build them up? So, I mean, you went through that fairly quickly, but is that like a couple of days, or do you sit on it for a while and you're really kind of moving things around, or do you already have it in your mind? Hey, this is what I'm after. I just have to put the placements in the right, on the right scale.
I usually have an idea in my head, and it's usually generated from being out in the field.
Okay,
Let me share my other screen here.
sure.
Photoshop, share, and move you guys. So actually, Ruth probably remembers this one. This is actually from my visit not too long ago down to the ranch.
Mhm.
Um, this piece is extremely simple. There's not much to it. So this probably took me, I'd say 3 hours max to composite this. It was, a straight on shot of the bird. Uh, I know I wanted to keep the background simple. I did not want any complexity to it. The two branches or just to break up the negative shapes in the background. So placing that around, moving those around did not take much. So doing this, the background here, this is the starting point. And thankfully, the background was already blurred. Like I didn't want any texture back there. So right off the bat, like this is pretty nice. I could have painted this, but again, there's not, you need to break up all this negative space. This is for a painting that would be boring. So come in there and throw the branches in there. And of course, I'm throwing it on top of that base image. So I have to come back in here and get the bird and the branch, pull that back in. And then because I've separated that from the background, I can actually go in there and lighten it up and make it, give it some more luminosity than what it was without cutting it out. And then from that, I do a layer on top of that where I can dodge and burn and just create some more textures back here. Like if I turn that back off, like there's darks down here that weren't there, but I turned that back on, and now there's some more interest back there. And it's again, this one was easy,
Do
but
you do you
got
have the photo of the painting
you give me a second.
if it's handy? I'm just yeah, the one when you talked about rust and paint, and I there were several people in this room that love the rust and paint. So you have your own little
That,
crowd
that's
in there.
that's the painting.
That's so cool.
So and
They're
actually, Ruth probably wants to see this one too because I did two paintings for my visit down there.
yeah, make that nice and big. Yeah.
So this is from my time at the ranch down there.
That doesn't even look, I mean, it's so realistic. Wow. Wow. Well, um, I'm sure you know, but you're very talented. Your art's beautiful.
Well, thank you. Uh,
Absolutely beautiful.
to kind of give you an idea, this guy here. Can I move this? I know you guys can't see this, but can I move it over here? Oh, yes, there we go. Thank you. Um, if you know anything about Photoshop, this panel over here, this is the layers.
Mhm.
And you can see all the layers I got in there. This one took, this was probably over 2 weeks just to play with this. And it's still not done yet because there's no adjustment layers on this. But to give you an idea of like what went into this, let me start to turn some of these off. So each one of these, this is a different photograph. All right, so that's where I started off with. This is two photographs put together to create the background, and then essentially I just moved it up, added some stuff on the right hand side there, moved it up again. Uh, oh, that's the block. So there's one bison back there that can't be seen, so I got to block it. So I just copied a piece of the landscape, the habitat, and just hit it. And then I start to put in the individual guys. And actually, the focus of this painting are these two guys here. They're getting ready to butt their heads, but they're way off in the distance. So continue just to add one, and I'm placing these purposely where they're at. I'm gonna make sure the ones in the background are smaller, the ones in the middle are a little bit medium, and then as we get to the front, we got this big guy. So that basically there's the design. I do need to tweak it a little bit more because your tendency wants to go right to that big bison in front, and I really want you to focus in on the fighting bison on the back. I really like how the big bison is looking back at like kids. That's what I'm thinking here. So this still needs to be tweaked a little bit, but like I said, this was probably 3 weeks in the making, off and on. I'm not going to sit here and design all day long because that's just exhausting. If I catch a break with the painting, I'm like, yeah, I'm just going over here and fiddle with this a little bit. Um, this guy, this is this guy started. It's not finished yet, but I love this painting. And to this was definitely inspired by my 2019 trip to Tanzania. In the Serengeti, there's this moment where all these warthogs were surrounding, and there's all these oxpeckers on them. And I'm like, this is insane. This is so cool. And then I don't know if you know about, there's a exhibition up at Lee Yawkey Woodson Art Museum, and it's called Birds and Art. And immediately I'm thinking to myself, like, this would be a birds and art piece. Like, I've got to paint this. And what dazzled me about this was just there were so many birds, but the warthogs, they weren't so close. I really wanted them stacked. So that's when that idea got in my head, and it wasn't until I got back to the States and I'm starting to pull all these guys apart. This image here has got tweaks, the minor tweaks where I start to adjust saturation and stuff. So I'm gonna turn those off. You can see things start to get even, just like the other piece I showed. Then I can come in here and I can start to turn off the layers and turn off that. That's the base image. That's what I started with. And then I start to come in and I'm starting to create, again, I wanted that layering feel of this, just so many warthogs. Continue bringing those in, creating these nice horizontal lines. And finally, last one. And then if I come in there and I add the adjustments, the first one is going to be the warthogs off in the distance back here. And turn that adjustment off. It darkens it up. Again, it's pushing it off and away because it's got less contrast. The warthog on the left-hand side here, going to lighten him up a little bit. That brings him forward. Then finally, the warthog on the very front here, turn on that, lightens it up, brings forward. On this piece, I want the birds to be the focal point, but I want this warthog here to be the subdominant. What I'm hoping is people will look at this and like, oh, look at all those birds. Oh my gosh, there's a warthog. That's that's my hope for this one.
That was exactly my reaction, was like, oh, because I have a friend that kind of spends all her free time in Kenya. That's her happy place. And the oxpeckers are just fascinating to me, but I have never seen them on a warthog.
Yep.
never. So
You definitely will see them on Cape buffalo
yes,
and
yes,
giraffes.
yes,
Definitely.
yes. But this is so very different. So do you enjoy the tinkering part
Oh
on
yeah.
Photoshop? Okay. Or
Right.
is it like a means to let me just get to my paints and my pencils?
No, as I said in the presentation, this is where I I know it takes art to do this,
Hmm.
but I think with the compositing stage, putting stuff together, that's the challenge, and to me, that's the juicy stuff.
Yeah, because you're building this. I mean, you're taking something you have in mind and you're just creating this scene the way you want it
Yes.
to express it in canvas or whatever medium is.
Yes.
So very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Um, I don't see any questions. Which that's okay. I told you that. I said I'm not worried that when people don't ask questions. I'm fascinated because I wish I had a little bit more artistic ability than I do. So this has been kind of really kind of fun to watch the dissection part, because I look at the finished painting and think, oh my God, it's beautiful, but I don't ever think about this part. It's kind of like I have a friend that, when we were designing our community garden plot, she's pulling out the graph paper. I'm like, oh, I want to look at the seeds, and I want to visualize the flower vase that I'll create. And she's like, no, we got to draw this in. And so that's kind of what this piece is. So I know this is necessary to get to the good stuff. So thank you for kind of giving us a peek behind the curtain. How long does it take for you to once you start painting? Do you work on it and work on a different project?
No,
Do
I stick. I'm not one of those painters that can bounce back and forth.
right.
Um, I have a hard enough time bouncing back and forth between editing instructional content and then going back to paint because I just want to get that project finished, but it doesn't always happen that way. Uh, this one here, Chara Verde, this I painted that in a week. So this is a 9 by 12.
Okay.
So, and it's organic. There's no man-made things in this that need to be perfect. The painting behind me is three crested caracaras on a pump jack. It's 33, no, it's bigger than that. I think it's 36 inches by 55 inches, literally the largest painting I've done.
Okay.
I'm almost to the point where this one's getting like, "Urgh." But that's 80% architectural stuff. It's rust, it's peeling paint, it's oil dripping down the jack pump. There's so many textures going on this. I think I'm on 4 months on this thing, which is really ridiculous.
Do you
Um,
already have a home for that? Is that something that somebody
yeah,
has commissioned?
this is a commission.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm
Very
not gonna. That's a very specific painting.
yeah, I was like, what I was going to ask, what inspired you to do that? But if somebody's got in their mind that this is what I want, I completely understand it. But
Yeah, the first commission from them, um, Mexican Eagles, Mexican Eagles, Mexican Eagles. There it is. So this is the first commission that they um, commissioned me to do. They they have crested caracaras in their yard that nest every year, and they love them.
mhm.
Uh, so I painted this. She loved it. This got into Birds and Art, and she went up to the exhibition. I wasn't able to do that, and she and I have been talking about the distinctive strut that the crested caracara has. Like when it's on the ground, it's got this really weird strut. We both refer to it as the angry old man strut. And I was talking, I was like, we need to do a painting like this, and like that needs to be incorporated into it. And so after the Birds and Art show, she's like, yeah, we need to pull the trigger on that and design this one back here. So the bird down the bottom is walking on the ground, and he's got his foot up, doing that strut. So that's how that came about.
So Donna has slipped in a question, and it's if you have a commission, do you share your composite with the client?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So I have a contract,
Mhm.
and it states that after the composite has been approved, there are no changes.
Okay. Okay.
You, you can decide to drop the commission, you lose your 1/3 deposit,
Mhm.
and I get to keep the painting.
Mhm.
But I mean, as you can see, where's here it is, Green Jay. There's the composite. There's the painting. This is why I spend so much time doing the composite, to work everything out, to get it to work right, to make it look like I want it to look at this stage. Now, when you create a painting, I mean, you look at all the saturation. It's got a lot more saturation. That's because it's a painting. So there should be no question, is he going to mess up? Am I going to like this? This is it. It's right here. If I wanted to, I could bring up the composite for this too, but it's pretty much the same thing. So yeah, no changes.
Change. No, that's cool. Um, that's really cool. I kind of grew up where crested caracaras were all over the place, and they're like that. They're in the cactus, and I don't often see them on the fence posts, but this is where their playground is. So
Yeah.
beautiful work.
Well,
Absolutely beautiful.
my first time down there trying to capture them, it took me a while to figure out where they were at, and I finally realized they're carrion birds. So you look
Yep.
for the vultures, and that was a lot of wasted time, and that's why I contacted the ranch down there to go
Yep.
do the video shoot with Ruth. So I got what I needed to.
Very cool. All right, let me get you to take down your screen and I'll close out this session. Gosh, let me just say thank you for coming and talking to a bunch of photographers.
I know.
I know we're scary, right? um, it's kind of funny for me because photography is easy, right? You click, don't like it, you delete it. But as an artist, I don't know. I mean, your version of deleting, is it scraping off the paint and starting over? Or are you just that good that you don't have to do that anymore?
Well, it's paint. You can always paint over it.
Yeah. See, I don't see that. I'm like, oh, I gotta throw it out and start all over. Do you ever do a painting where that's been commissioned and it's gonna go out the door? Do you ever just go, I wish they changed their mind?
I wouldn't have accepted the painting then.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm I'm pretty particular about accepting commissions. Like I won't do pet portraits,
Okay.
especially a pet that's deceased.
Yeah, right.
You get this picture, it's like 20 years old. I'm like, can you paint this? Can you make them look good? Now, so it's got to be very. I've got to be interested in it. Like when the collector from Texas called me up about the crested carrot, the first crested carrot painting, her enthusiasm over this bird was just overwhelming. And then of course I never heard about the bird, and I was like, well, this sounds interesting. I want to do this. And then of course, second one, I'm all over this because it's got man-made materials. So I've got to have my interest in the commission.
Right. Because I mean that to be honest, you're going to spend some time, whether you're compositing or with your paintbrushes. You're
Yes,
going to have to love what you're producing. So
yes.
yeah, I
And
get.
that's why I do spend so much time in the compositing stage. When I get to this, and the students that I do have here would probably be like, yeah, he says this all the time. This is production for me. I know that makes it unromantic. Oh, you're a painter. You love what you're doing. But this is production, and I need to figure out everything in this in the composite so that when I sit down to paint, I'm just pushing paint and I'm loving what I'm doing. I don't have to worry about, is this bird in the right spot? Is my selective focus where it needs to be? I'm just enjoying the painting process.
Yeah. And I guess too, I'm thinking, the days of the painters that didn't have the software that could allow you to I don't want to say cut corners because that is not the right phrase, but to see it without having to sketch it out
Well,
and re-sketch it out.
funny you brought this up because I was doing the presentation today. It's like, should I put a little part in there about, back in the day when I didn't have Photoshop? Because
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I would have I'd have my photographs and they were real photographs, not digital photographs. And I'm doing my sketches, and then I would go over to Kinko's. I don't know if anybody remembers Kinko's. It's an office supply place. And they'd have a light table, and I'd create my rectangle on top of the light table, and I'd move my sketches around on tracing paper to basically do the same thing I do in Photoshop, but on tracing paper on a light table. If I needed to enlarge something, I just go over to the copier, copy it, enlarge it, and again, bring it over and paste it. And before you know it, I have this large sheet of tracing paper with taped on sketches and Xerox copies. I'm like, oh, there's my composition. So that's back in the day.
That's back. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing what technology can really push us forward, and it gives us more tools,
Yep.
more tools we have, and um the more creativity, the time we have to be creative. So yay for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming to talk to our group. I so appreciate it. I just love this. This is something that I've been looking forward to for a while, because I'm I wish I could paint. Ruth Hoyt's in here; she can paint. So I'm always envious when she'll either share with me or she'll post a sketch, and I'm very envious. And I'll just say I'm just plain old jealous. That's what I'm at. But thank you for sharing an insight into kind of how you spend your time um, producing your art.
Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Next week, Lisa Merrill will be here to share her presentation, Lose the Literal Impressionist Photography. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.